everyone, and welcome back to A Walk to Work with Whittaker. Well, the finale is upon us. It is time to review Doctor Who Flux, Chapter 6, The Vanquishers, the 6th episode of Doctor Who Series 13. And, wow. Look, I'm going to start by saying this episode was messy. This was a messy, messy episode. I've said before, say in my review of Revolution of the Daleks, that I feel some of these stories could be longer. But I've also said, particularly in Series 11, that it sometimes felt like 50 minutes was too long for some stories there. But this is definitely one that I think could have benefited from an additional 10 minutes. Just some of the scene transitions, you have a line and then there's immediately a transition into the next scene where there could have been just a little bit of breathing room. I do feel that it does a good enough job in wrapping up a lot of the plot points of the series. It gives us a look at who or what Time is as a personification, which is a very 90s Doctor Who novels kind of representation of the character. But I also like the idea that in order to solve all these plot points, you need more than one Doctor. And, you know, I thought when the Pocket Watch was opened that, you know, that might be a way that we saw more of Joe Martin's fugitive Doctor in this episode. But I actually like the triplicating of Jodie here. Now, one of the 13th Doctors just sort of stumbles around the whole time in the Division Station. But a lot of the other action is given to the other two Doctors, who are brilliant and magnetic. Somewhat, I think, to the detriment of, say, Dan and Yaz's contributions to the plot. But even then, you know, Yaz gets to resolve part of the cliffhanger. She's been told this door leads to danger last week, so as soon as they're in danger from Zontaran, she's like, well, I'm just going to open that. Now, I've been joking all week on Twitter that I thought that the door that leads to extreme danger was going to go to 21st century Sheffield. I thought that would be a lovely joke. But alas, it was not to be. And instead, we don't see where it goes. It just sort of sends out a lot of lightning, electricity to stun the Sontarans. That was a little bit disappointing. I think that kind of sums up what sort of happens in this episode, in that everything that happens is relating to something that has happened before. We even get an explanation as to what the old house is in the Doctor's visions, and I thought that because we'd seen that so little in the past few weeks, that was building up into the specials next year. But I'm pleased that we got an explanation here, and I like the idea that the reason it's this old rickety house is because it represents the Doctor's life. You know, the traveller with their days like crazy paving. Of course that represents their life. And I find it fascinating here that we're introduced to the idea that Swarm and Azure can not only dissolve matter and destroy matter, but they can recombine it and reassemble it, which means Tecteun is not necessarily dead. It means all the people that Swarm and Azure have attacked are not necessarily dead. And Swarm and Azure don't appear to die at the end of this episode. They ascend, according to Azure. So we haven't necessarily seen the last of them. I hope we haven't seen the last of them. It doesn't feel like that their story is totally over, but their plan here is foiled. And I love that their plan is just to revel in the chaos, and they told us that as far back as part 3. You know, we don't necessarily need them to have a plan to rule the universe. They just want to watch it get destroyed and go back and rewind and watch it get destroyed again. They're kind of Doctor Who fans in that regard. Anyway. I'm not saying we're destructive, I'm just saying we enjoy constantly rewatching a show where the universe keeps getting put on display. Speaking of the universe, a good chunk of it's been kind of dissolved now by the Flux, and it's a catch-22, isn't it? Because we could so easily, there's some people walking the dog, so I'm just going to let them pass ahead of me, we could so easily have had a magical reset button episode where the universe is entirely restored. This is a very busy road to be walking down. I'm going to go back this way and take a crossroad. We could have had a situation where the universe was entirely restored, and that would have felt like a bit of a cheat. But instead we're left with a universe that has been at least half, if not mostly, destroyed. Now, will that factor into the specials? I don't know. It has happened in Doctor Who before. The vast bits of the universe have been destroyed in stories like Legopolis. So the Doctor saves Earth, a handful of the rest of the universe, but yeah, is it a victory? Of course we're led to believe it is because we're sort of based on Earth, and that brings me to Bel and Vinder. A lot of people have been saying, what's the point of Bel and Vinder? People thought that they were the Doctor's parents. Could still be. Baby hasn't been born yet. But I've been seeing some dissatisfaction online as to whether, was it worth having them in the plot if they're not some big plot MacGuffin? I kind of like them possibly being just two people who've been caught up in all this. Because all the other characters we meet are our Earth interest characters. And obviously we care about Earth because we live there, but in terms of the plot, we care about Earth being defended because Yaz, Dan, Jericho, Joseph Williamson are all from there. Vinder and Yaz represent the peoples of the universe. Even though they look human, it's kind of implied that their society, their more technologically advanced society, is contemporaneous with 21st century Earth. Because Bel doesn't seem to be able to time travel, and yet she's in the same time period as 21st century Earth throughout this. So that's what I think they're there for, if it's not revealed that the baby that they're going to have is someone significant in the upcoming specials. That could still happen. I was pleased to see them reunited. I think it would have been really sad if they hadn't been, or if one of them had died, what have you. So instead, we get a satisfactory plot ending there. The Grand Serpent is also dealt with, and that gives Vinder a bit of retribution. The Grand Serpent exiled him, he's exiling the Grand Serpent. Kate didn't get to do enough. Kate Stewart didn't get to do enough. She says to us, I'm, the head of the resistance to the Sontarans. Would have been nice to see that. Would have been nice to see her directing some forces fighting against Sontarans. I'm hoping that this is reintroducing her to be in a bigger role in one of the specials next year. That's what I'm hoping. That's what it feels like, to be perfectly honest with you. Because there are so many characters here already that if we're not bringing back Kate in a larger role next year, we don't lose anything by not having her in this special. The whole thing with UNIT having been infiltrated could have been explained in a later special in order to bring Kate in, you know what I mean? Or it could have been explained here, and then we don't find out what happened to Kate until next year. But that's a minor thing because she still gets to deliver some really nice pieces of dialogue, and she's a great actress, so that works out really well. As I say, I felt Dan and Yaz were a little underused, but we did just have 2 episodes with them playing a very strong part. So I don't mind them being underused a bit here, and at least the Doctor does admit to Yaz at the end that she should have confided in her and let her in. I will come back to that end scene later because I have opinions on that. But overall, a sort of criticism I've seen of Chibnall, and I've made myself, is, a lack of character development. And if anything, we may even have too much here. Every character in this has an understandable motivation, even if it's just a desire to get home or to return to their own time. And almost every character's individual abilities get used as well. I would say the characters who suffer most from not having that are Yaz and Dan, but their abilities and strengths were showcased last week on the quest to get back to the Doctor. And even then, they are still involved in the overall plan to trick the Sontarans, the Daleks, and the Cybermen. Now, I've seen criticism of this as well. Oh my god, the Doctor allows the Daleks and Cybermen and Sontarans to be blown up in a trap. How awful. It's like, well, it's at least the 5th time that, to the best of her knowledge, the Doctor has wiped out all the Daleks. The Daleks are Evil of the Daleks, Remembrance of the Daleks, the Time War, and basically every time David Tennant runs into them. So why is it a problem here? I don't see that at all. And again, it's the Doctor repurposing the Sontaran plan. The Doctor doesn't lure them into a trap, the Sontarans lure them into a trap, and the Doctor just sets the mousetrap, a couple of astronomical units away from where it's meant to be. I think the solution of Passenger absorbing the Flux is a really terrific idea. And it does mean that the Flux could still be a threat further down the line. It's been contained. It hasn't been destroyed. And I find that uneasy but interesting. There's also like, how do you totally defeat something like that? If you don't know exactly how it was created, you know why it's created, but not how. How else do you defeat it but to contain it? And it builds on stuff we've been told before about the Passenger form. I think it's neat. I think so much of this finale is neat in the way it explains or deals with things that have come before. I just think it happens too fast, is my problem. It could have happened a lot slower, had more times for explanations, but that being said, it was an incredible amount of fun, especially the scene where the Doctor is flirting with herself, because this is the Doctor who has not shown much interest in the idea of attraction to anyone, you know what I mean? And I know, again, I've spoken about Fazzies on these reviews. I know there are those of you out there who are seeing this relationship between the Doctor and Yaz, and it looks like we may be finally developing that this series as well. I mean, maybe this is a nascent thing that's happening with the Doctor. Who knows? Or maybe it's just the Doctor doing obfuscation the way she does. I absolutely love the way she deals with the Grand Serpent and annoys him and, basically hoists him with his own petard. That's really brilliant. And the two Doctors kind of talking to each other. I like that one of the Doctors sort of defers to the other, but it's still acknowledged that, you're kind of getting in my way a bit here. Oh, yeah, sorry, I'll yield out of the way. We do, unfortunately, have the Doctor who's just stumbling around the Division space station, but oh well. And that leads us to Atropos, where Swarm and Azure ascend. I'm really hoping that leads to something else, because otherwise it's just really short and convenient. And we get Time as portrayed by Jodie Whittaker in her Joe Martin coat, which is interesting and a choice. And a retread of the whole, he will knock 4 times kind of thing. But again, I think Jodie is really great in that scene. I'm sorry I keep fiddling with these, they just keep trying to pop out. I hope it's not giving you too much microphone noise. But yeah, Jodie is really great in those scenes. And I am kind of stunned that they didn't go with the thing of her opening the pocket watch immediately, especially for an episode which is sort of not letting its ideas breathe enough, in my opinion. But here, this idea that she's got the pocket watch is left to breathe. And so when we get to that final scene in the TARDIS, via, of course, Diane isn't quite sure she wants to go on the date with Dan now. And I've seen people... This is weird, right? Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who is often accused of being predictable. And to me, the predictable thing would be for Diane to act like nothing ever happened. But instead she doesn't, and she's not... She has been through a traumatic experience, and even though I think she understands it's not Dan's fault, she doesn't want to risk a repeat of that or bringing up those memories. Why would she? And to me, that is an unpredictable way to write that scene. And yet I've seen people complaining about it. And it's like, no, I entirely understand Diane's reaction to that. And it allows Dan to go off and have some adventures with the Doctor and Yaz. Now, of course, we then get the Doctor saying to Yaz, look, I'm sorry I didn't confide in you. I'm going to tell you. And that possible bit of romantic tension broken by Dan. Who can say at this stage? But I find the idea that the Doctor dumps the pocket watch really interesting, because something I've said about this whole timeless child thing since Revolution of the Daleks is I feel like the Doctor wouldn't care as much as she does, Okay, so I've had these past lives. What of it? Yeah, I'm a new person every time, a clean slate every time. And her driving force through Flux, has been trying to find out these memories, even to the point of staying in the time stream during Once Upon Time when she could possibly die. And here she doesn't go for it. She could find this stuff out, but I think once she's got it in her hand, she's wondering, well, what am I going to find out about myself? I better put it away. But I think in another way, pairing that with the scene where she says she's ready to tell Yaz everything is hopefully a sign that she's able to live her life in the present without having to dwell on the past. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm getting out of that scene. But of course, she might want to look at it someday. And that's when she says, unless I really want it. And that makes me wonder, Centenary Special, her finale, that could be when we find out. Overall, this is a 7 out of 10 from me. I'm just doing laps of this area because it's nice and quiet. This is a 7 out of 10 from me. I think it pretty much sticks the landing. It just needs more finesse. It's very blunt in the way it sticks the landing. And it's unfortunate, but that's Chris Chibnall. He seems to sort of get excited with his ideas, bash them out, and then not go back and think about, hey, can I put some connective tissue in here to make this a bit more smooth, a bit more organic? No, just power on through, power on through, power on through. So yeah, it's kind of like, if anything, it has the opposite problem of the Timeless Children, where the Timeless Children presented these facts and exposition in the most prosaic way possible. This presents them in a really exciting fashion, to the point that I'm left going, okay, I'm going to need to sit down and watch this maybe at 75% speed, just to sort of catch up. One thing I forgot to mention, of course, is the sacrifice of Professor Jericho, which is a scene where they allowed it to slow down. It's kind of unfortunate that it happened, and again, because of the speed of the episode, Yaz's reaction is sort of confined to looking down at her shoes when they've just spent 3 years of their lives together. I am pretty sure there must be a longer cut of the story that has a reaction to that. You know what I mean? And it's a shame we don't get it here. Maybe there'll be some deleted scenes. But for the actual sacrifice itself, Kevin McNally, who's a very fine actor, does that scene really well. It could have been an utterly sad and tragic moment, but instead it's a moment of great heroism. And a little bit of humour as well, a little bit of a twinkle in the eye. But aside from that, the Doctor gets Claire home, reunites Belle and Vinda, gives Carvanista new companions, after discovering that Carvanista was one of her companions. It's such a hard episode to talk about because it's so dense, and I've only watched it once. I do intend in the next 2 weeks to rewatch all 6 episodes in close proximity. Perhaps not one a day, but if I have time, one a day. So next week there will be a final walk to work with Whittaker, talking about Flux as a story as a whole. How does it hold together? Look, I'll be honest with you all. Something happening this week that's a bit hard for me. I'm going to a friend's funeral tomorrow. So I would really love it in the comments if you could just drop your favourite part of this episode. That would be a wonderful thing for me to read. But, as ever, thank you all so much for watching. Please drop your opinions down below, especially if it's your favourite bit of the episode. That would be incredibly helpful. And I will be back next week with a great big walk wrap-up review of Flux. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy Doctor Who, and look forward to Eve of the Daleks. Bye.